So 30 to 40 minutes, I'll probably be closer to the 30-minute side. Most of you in this room are actually coming from a higher education standpoint than I am. I graduated a bachelor's degree in psychology from this great institution. I want this to be just sort of interactive, so we don't have to wait for the end to fire questions at me. We'll do a proper Q&A at the end. But there's nothing in this deck that you're going to walk away, I don't think, totally mind blown by. I'm just a regular guy that works really, really hard. And a lot of what's going to be in this presentation is pretty intuitive. Again, lucky for me, my job, my industry, what I do on the day-to-day is far removed from like splitting atoms. Thank God, because I would probably fail miserably. But I just want to start off by saying, actually, can you tell which is the old picture and which is the new picture besides it saying circa 99? So this is my wife and I in Iceland last year. I have two boys, 17 and 13. My 17-year-old is kind of walking around the perimeter. Some of you heard me say today we took a proper tour. He's a junior in high school. He's a talented baseball player, and he's thinking about coming to PSU. So today was, for me, pretty transformative and pretty cool because it was full circle. And to see him as a young man experience the campus and take a proper tour from admissions was pretty cool. Two quick reactions. I shared this with a little fundraising initiative that the university came up with, and I was printing a copy out at work to distribute to other fellow classmates at PSU. I brought it into my CFO, Chief Financial Officer, and she said, "Oh my God, Brooke looks exactly the same." And I was like, okay, cool. I had a meeting with my executive chef, and this was sitting on my desk, and he goes, "Oh, super cool. Is that you and Brooke?" And he goes, "Damn, Brooke hasn't changed a bit." And I was like, I can work on that though, right? I mean, so just for those of you that are well younger than me, this is kind of what was in my 5-disc changer when I got here. Some pretty cool albums. Some of you are probably saying, what's a 5-disc changer? But Weezer, good album. Alice in Chains, Nirvana Unplugged. Some of this has really stood the test of time. But to give you an idea, like how long ago we're talking about, 20 plus years ago. Movies, right? Pulp Fiction, Natural Born Killers. This one I never really, I've seen this a million times. This one I was kind of like, I'm not the brightest guy in the room, so I had to probably watch it a few times. There's, brilliant movie here. And then in our dorm rooms were those things. Crazy, 100%. So to just give you an idea of like sort of where I'm coming from. When I put this slide together, what occurred to me was bandwidth and the amount of time we spend. So I'm very much interested in efficiency. Like I think I have my health and time. Everything else is sort of my family. Everything else is sort of cream cheese. So as you get to be further in your career, you focus on how your minutes are spent, and you want them to be, optimal. So these are things we didn't have. And part of me is like, how the heck did I even exist without them? And then just from a time crunch standpoint, like if all of you think about these 4 items that we use day in and day out, if you were to aggregate the amount of time that you spend on these, I was thinking to myself, like, what did I do? We must have been like rubbing sticks together at Fox Park or something, because like, I don't know what I would do. Does anybody know what that actually is? A Walkman is incorrect, Dr. Wu. Sorry. Anybody? Oh my God.
It's like a cassette player. It looks like you put in like small tape to listen to music on.
This is an answering machine. So you plug this into your phone, and when someone calls you, it rings 5 times. Then it says, "Hi, this is Kevin. I'm not here, blah, 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 blah." You run home, and there's a red light that blinks that says, "Your buddy's called you a couple times," and you press play, and that little tape spits it out. Movie rentals was a place you could actually walk into, and you would pick by section a movie, and it actually came in a box, and you pop open the box, bring it home, pop it into your VCR. Crazy town. This is you probably can't see from here, a handwritten telephone list. So freshman year, I lived at Hall, all guys. It was a great experience, a lot of fun. I remember vividly someone pulling the fire alarm and us like sliding down the fire escape, sort of scantily clad in January or whatever it was, very, very cold. And then my sophomore year, I moved in with 3 women who were all upperclassmen at PSC at the time. They were on the basketball team. We lived in a little gray house across from Mayhew Funeral Home on 17 Langdon Street. Awesome. That experience was in a lot of ways transformative as well. But we used to have this taped to our fridge. It was a list of phone numbers. So it's like your buddy John, 203, ba, 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 ba. And every so few months, my roommates would rewrite them nice and neat. But today, unheard of. Even using a landline phone, kind of unheard of. Telephone booths, phone books. He was my president while I was here at Plymouth State. You guys know about him. Maybe some of you ran into him. Really wonderful guy. I had really dear friends of mine lived at 65, 67 Langdon Street. His house was right next door. And I would bump into him from time to time. And I remember one time he said to me, "Young man, you got to put a coat on. It's freezing. You're going to die out here." And I remember thinking, that's a president who's willing to relate to students. And when he passed, it hit me kind of hard because he was a really good guy, and he would remember me and see me on campus and make a point to say hello. So his passing, while unfortunately he had an awesome career, awesome life. Does anybody know who that is? I'll give you one large Lindt legit chocolate bar. Someone has to know who that is. Can you see it all right? He's a chef. He passed, funny, I'm not trying to be morbid, passed away not too long. Anybody? First? No, close. First name's Charlie. Really good Netflix documentary just came out. Charlie.
Charles Lindt?
Nope. Good guess though. Say Trotter. Trotter, good job. Charlie Trotter was an executive chef at a place called Trotter's in Chicago. When I was a sophomore here at Plymouth State College at the time, I took a job in Waterville Valley at a place called the William Tell. It's no longer there. Also took a job at a place called the Coyote Grill, strictly just for beer money. I was broke, coming from Nashua, New Hampshire, middle-class family. Literally walked into these two restaurants. And in the case of the William Tell, stumbled upon a really, really fantastically talented Swiss chef. Again, middle-class kid from Nashua, New Hampshire. I don't know what Swiss cuisine was. I maybe had a schnitzel in my life once or twice. But I fell in love with hospitality immediately. And at the time, I don't think there was a hotel restaurant management program here, a hospitality degree. So halfway through my career at Plymouth, I just pushed through and got my degree in psych. But I knew instantly that I was in love with hospitality, and I wanted to serve people, and I wanted to do some cooking, and I wanted to get out in the front of house. And it was like they were speaking a different language, and I was very intrigued by that. So anytime in my career, or even prior to that in school, I'd notice someone, and we're going to talk about being articulate, I would always write things down, go to a thesaurus, learn new words. I was always enamored by people who had that sort of command of the English language. So for this, I had never seen food like this, but I was instantly attracted to it. But as I said, here, studying psych, my wife was a social worker, so we saw each other at Hyde a lot. This was before we were married, obviously. But that's where my career started off, and I started cooking, again, strictly just for spending money on the weekends. Got to sort of rub elbows with some high-end clientele who were coming up here, who have ski houses in New Hampshire, that crowd. And it was pretty cool, and fell in love with hospitality straight away. Fast forward, graduated from here May 1999. You guys have to know who that is. No candy bar for this one. Can you say? Joe Dudek? Everyone knows Joe Dudek, right? So Sports Illustrated voted Plymouth State College's Heisman Trophy favorite, Joe Dudek. Funny thing is, Joe Dudek, when he left here 1985, 1986, that's Bo Jackson. Sports Illustrated literally picked one of our guys over Bo Jackson and Chuck Long. That's not quite as surprising as Bo Jackson, to win the Heisman Trophy. I think when Joe left here, he went and played in the CFL or semi-pro or had some stints playing football. Played for, so NFL, legit. Crazy thing is, when I walked across that stage commencement of May 99, Joe Dudek was in my class. So he took some time off and came back. And so I think at some point there's a roster, and I said to my buddies, I'm like, do you guys understand? Like, we're graduating in May 1999 with Joe Dudek. My wife is from Rhode Island originally, so we moved there, went to a place called Watch Hill and then Newport, and I took a job as an executive chef at a 50-seat, really super stodgy French restaurant. Stodgy meaning all copper pans, and it was like a destination. You wouldn't go there for just a quick bite. It was a place that you would bring someone for your anniversary or your something to celebrate. 3 or 4 hour experience. It wasn't quick fast food service. But I was intrigued by that, and I gravitated towards that type of cuisine. So then in 2002, I was highlighted in a prominent magazine, and the punchline was essentially, talented young chef, yeah, his food was really, really good, but the service at the front of house was a little bit lacking. So I took my apron off and moved into the front of house to fix that. And so for me, a business lesson there is that, and I teach my team, or try to coach my team through this all the time, don't stay in your silo, right? If you're in a marketing department, someone else is and research, or in my case, I've got a CFO or an executive chef, a golf pro, tennis pro, squash pro. If one of us is failing, we're all failing. So for me to take my apron off and get out of the kitchen, because the kitchen was doing fine, my job was to go out and fix service. So again, once I left the kitchen, I never went back, cook all the time at home. But essentially, I think in business, again, very simple lesson to say that, we're all a team and we're all pushing the rock up the same hill. So if I was to just sit back and say, oh, I got a really good write-up in food and wine, talented chef, let the front of house burn down, I wouldn't be the leader that I'd like to be. Okay, second candy bar, please. Anybody? Does anybody know who that is? That's the tough one. William F. Buckley Jr. William F. Buckley Jr. So this slide, how to get from point A to point B, right? So our expectation is the top left. The reality is the bottom of that, right? We never know. Like my son today, he answered a question. Someone at admission said, what do you know, what do you plan to study at Plymouth? My son was like, I have no idea. I'm a junior in high school. I don't think I knew what I was going to do until, again, fell in love with hospitality. So it's okay that your reality is going to look a little bit more like this than A. So again, super intuitive, nothing that's going to blow your mind. Listen and emulate the best of the best. Go to the toughest court, face the toughest opponents. Coach, you'll know this from playing hoops. I grew up going to public school, and near my house there was a series of basketball courts, like 5 in a row. And we'd go there every day to play basketball. And the first court was the toughest, best, most accomplished players. And then as you went back to the second, third, fourth, fifth, the fifth court all the way away was like the beginners, right? And so I had a moment where I was a pretty good player, and I enjoyed playing. And it was more fun, I shouldn't say more fun. Sometimes it was more rewarding to go to the back 2 or 3 courts because I'd kind of kick everybody's butt. Me and my guys, we would just crush. But I would say in life and in business, you got to go to the toughest court. You're not going to get any better unless you go to that very front court and surround yourself with people that are quicker and smarter and more savvy. Again, maybe it's not as enjoyable getting your ass kicked from time to time, but you're not going to get any better. Again, nothing counterintuitive about that. Sponge. And also write it all down. People learn in different ways, and I'm not going to pontificate about how people learn because I'm not an expert in that field. But I would say spend a lot of time sort of, again, being a sponge, witnessing, watching, writing everything down. People that just sort of blast through their workday, and I can tell when they're not stopping and listening or stopping and picking things up, they're just sort of like punch in, punch out, bangers to get through the day. And that's okay. We all have to put food on our table. But I think the only way that part of the reason I got to where I am today, and again, not slapping myself in the back, is that, I was a 2.85 GPA. Again, nothing special about that, but I learned from a lot of really talented people and I paid attention along the way. Being articulate. So William F. Buckley Jr. used to host, and again, this is way before even my time. My wife thinks I'm such a dork because I watch this. If you go and just look up Firing Line, literally like Firing Line. He was the host of a TV show. It was kind of like a talk show, one-on-one. He'd have prominent political figures, entertainers. Just watch 7 minutes of it. Firing Line, William F. Buckley. His command of the English language was something I gravitated to immediately. As soon as he started to speak, sometimes he sort of has that like Brahmin, Boston, snooty tone, right? So you got to just kind of ignore that for a second. My wife isn't unable to ignore it. As soon as she hears it, she's like, oh my God, turn this off. But what I would say is if you're going to lead people and you're going to ask people to run through a brick wall or a burning building for you, to the degree that you can be really articulate and really clear in your communication, you'll find it easier to lead folks. And so I think if all of you started walking around talking like William F. Buckley, I'd be a little bit concerned because it's a lot. When you watch 5 minutes of it, you'll realize. But I think as a business leader or a leader in life, I think if you're going to communicate, you have to communicate clearly and not at a 5th grade level. You got to be sort of pretty sharp. Oprah said it, again, basketball analogy. Surround yourself with people, basically who are going to lift you higher. So this is that's not my house on the top left. Some of you have actually been there. Raise your hand if you've been there. Yeah, good. That's my office. That's a place called the Country Club in New Canaan, Connecticut. It's about 35 minutes outside of Manhattan. 35-minute train ride. Really, really cool spot. That's our new clubhouse. We did, it was like a $25 million renovation in 2020, right before COVID. And the curious part about that project is we were finished, literally, project was done, artwork was hung on the walls. Our members had waited 2.5, 3 years to move into their new clubhouse. They were assessed a big chunk of change in order to fund. It's like a lot of the projects you see doing here. Someone has to pay for that. And then COVID hit and the state shut us down. And so our poor members were like looking through the windows at a finished asset that they couldn't use, and it was driving them crazy. So in my business, like many, there are post-COVID data points that we watch really, really closely. For us, it was a heyday. It was a boom time. We had such pent-up demand because people wanted to get back to normal and eat and drink, play golf with their friends and socialize. For us, it was 3x that because they had this new shiny toy to play with. So we were drinking from the fire hose for quite some time, which is a good problem to have in my business. Just a snapshot. So our business is $16 million a year in, $16 million a year out. So private clubs, I won't get into the difference between 501c3 or 501c7, but essentially a nonprofit entity. So 16 million in, 60 million out. Those are all the sports. I play golf, squash, paddle, pickle, padel. Has anybody heard of padel? Awesome. YouTube padel. It's a pretty cool sport. Kind of a combination between squash and doubles tennis, or paddle tennis is called platform tennis, is the proper name. But if you're hitting shots, we're playing doubles. I'm rallying with you. You can hit a shot at me and I can let it go by me and it can bounce off this back wall and I can return it. So that's why it's a little bit like squash. We have a 70 family wait list. So we have a cap. Our bylaws say you can't have more than X members. It's 375. We have 70 families dying to spend $125,000 to join our club. They've got nowhere to go. And I won't bore you with club economics, but the reason they have nowhere to go is because we're full and we're not open to the public. It's a very exclusive place. Again, proud that some of you have been there. Come back anytime. I mean that. As I said, when you guys are there, it's a cool spot and you guys are always welcome. Anybody in this room, please. The average age of our members dropped 8 years in 3 years. So our average member used to be 55, 56 years old. Now he or she is 48, 47 years old. And so that has just caused attrition, which is the number of people leaving the club on an annual basis, to just come to a screeching halt. It used to be our industry anywhere between 4 and 7%. For us, that translated to like 15 or 20 members that moved to Florida for good or died or stopped playing golf, 15 or 20 new guys and gals and their families to come in. So that has just seized right up to a point where, you know, we're about 12 years on the wait list, which again, boring you with club economics, it's a good problem to have. And then last Wednesday, we had a reservation of the name Stewart. So my whole culinary team, front of house team, and you guys were in the same room that I'm talking about. And so it was Martha Stewart. So again, if you're a young chef and she's coming to dinner at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday night, that could make, that's my chef, that wasn't really my chef, but that was his reaction because he found out about 4 o'clock. And again, like the Swiss chef that I learned from, old school chefs would literally throw pots and pans and scream and call you stupid, and you can't do that nowadays. But I would be lying to you if I told you that I didn't learn a ton from those types of chefs. So what do? We panicked for a second because we're like, holy smokes, Martha Stewart's coming in 3 minutes or 3 hours. But then you got to be calm. You assemble your dream team and you get it done. I would say, good or bad, we have a whole young brigade of chefs who are just proud to cook Martha Stewart food. She came in, she actually took a doggy bag home, which I think she does everywhere she goes because everyone knows it's Martha Stewart. So at the end of every meal, she always says, oh, that was lovely. Would you please package it up, tell the chef it was excellent, I'm going to bring it home, which I don't know if she actually intends to ever eat it again because I doubt Martha Stewart eats leftovers, but I could be wrong. But for us, that's a big deal. That's a big transaction at a high price point. All of our transactions are very important. Something as simple as a cup of soup and half of an egg salad sandwich has to be like on point every time. So it's a high pressure environment. The other thing is different businesses have different peaks and valleys. For us, Wednesdays aren't typically all that busy. So you might rest on your laurels and take the night off or cut a few cooks and tell somebody they can leave early. But for us, a Wednesday is as important as a Saturday night in the restaurant business. I know I'm flying along. Any questions? No? That's either really good or really bad. Again, for me in the private club sector, I get called when a change agent is needed. Organization realizes it's become less relevant. So again, where I come from, you could swing a cat where I live. You could swing a cat and hit like 10 or 12 really historic, awesome country club properties, and we all compete for the same dollar, compete for the same members. So we have to put out the best product we possibly can 24/7. I've been fortunate, and it was serendipitous, not by design, to oversee $120 million of large-scale capital projects. So what does that mean? That means when a club realizes they're not relevant in the marketplace, they're going to bulldoze their clubhouse and borrow $20 million and build a new clubhouse. That's typically when my phone rings. Again, but not by design. It just happened to be a little bit of experience under my belt, perpetuated, and now that's where we are. When you take on a new role, you've heard this before, first 90 days are crucial, both for the client side, who's this new person that just took over our organization, but also for the team. You have to prove. I wouldn't advocate for making any rash changes in personnel, but there's something to be said by, and we'll talk about this in a second, rooting out the cancers in your industry, right? You got to make a change. You got to make some waves. You have to set the tone for your team that you mean business and you're going to do what's right for the organization. Finding your special niche too. So again, for me, large scale capital projects, as a former chef, restaurateur, if you try to be everything to everybody, you're going to fail miserably. The best businesses in the world isolate 5 or 6 things that they do well, and they stick to those things. And as soon as they try to scale and explore really other avenues too aggressively, sometimes too much is too much. So I think for me, that resonates with me only because I think if you find your skill and that skill set's met with opportunity, just stick to your plan. If you try to do 48 things well, I doubt you'll be able to do that. Question?
Yeah, how do you typically find or effectively find problematic individuals within an organization?
Most of the time, they just sort of rear their heads. I would say I'm fortunate that I have 225 employees at peak season and a dozen department heads. So that's small enough that I can still rub elbows with everybody. I can walk through the kitchen and say hello to everybody, in the morning and sort of watch. But I would say they sort of rear their ugly head just by pure performance. Or in our business, we say talk to the caddies. Caddies hang out with members. They're like sort of the lifeblood of, what's going well in an organization or what's not going well. I would say whether it's the water cooler or the employee break room, for me to go in there and just listen, you can get, because people will complain about each other. If someone's underperforming, their fellow employees will sort of push them out and say, what's going on with Wu? He didn't do it. He left 30 minutes early the other night, and so listening to your people, I guess, would be a short way of saying that too, because, yeah.
Also, how do you go about removing these, individuals without also coming off as too harsh of a team?
It gets easier with time. It's like public speaking. The first time you speak publicly, you're terrified. The 58th time you do it, it looks kind of natural. You're still a little bit terrified inside. So we'll talk about that in a second. I'm not punting your question because I would say a lot of mediocre managers will hesitate, and we'll talk about Jack Welch in a second. So that's a little hint for the next candy bar. But we'll get to that slide in a second. I don't want to. This kind of goes hand in hand with this too. Bell curve, yay. So far left, unacceptable performers, underperformers. Middle of the pack, or the sort of meat of the bell curve, and then out here exceeds expectations or outstanding. So this is kind of what we're talking about. Pretty easy to flag those folks on the left. In my experience, our tendency as managers or leaders is to focus on these folks here. I think the reason for that is because they're underperforming. And so we think our job is, let's take those underperformers and coach them through to a higher performing level, right? Let's get them back on track. What I would tell you is you should deploy your resources here to these folks. Your time and your energy should be spent here, not here. The reason for that is, yes, it's important to rehabilitate these people. It's important to focus on these people. But I would tell you, my experience, and just one guy's experience, there's a saying that's like, a cheetah can't change its spots, or is it a leopard or a cheetah has spots? You know what I mean? They're not going to change their spots. So the likelihood that you take this group and do a 180 and bring them over here is very, very low. And oh, by the way, if you do that and you achieve that, you've probably exerted and spent countless hours and energy. So I would say, conversely, let's say Dr. Wu's on my team. He's over here, right, performing at a very high level. So I walk in day to day and I'm like, he's good. We're good. He's good. He's my guy. He's meeting quotas, meeting deadlines, crushing it. So my energy isn't going to be focused on him because he's performing at a high level. And again, human nature is to come down here and spend your time here. What I would say is that we need to pay attention to these folks even more because they're going to run through the proverbial burning building or brick wall for you. So allocate your resources here, not here. Kind of saying the same thing like 5 different times. But again, don't ignore these folks. But I see too many times managers spend all their time here when they should be there. Oh, which leads to smart hiring. Okay. Does anyone know who that guy is in the top right-hand corner? Oh my God. I just said it.
Jack Welch.
Jack Welch. Thank you. All right. Jack Welch, really talented. He was the CEO of GE on many different facets and levels. Tremendous leader, tremendous businessman. Not a great guy in his personal life, and I won't present on that today because I shouldn't, but as a business leader, really, really talented. We all know who this guy is too. So this is to your question. Addition by subtraction. Every time that I make a difficult decision to terminate somebody or change a relationship or whatever the politically correct term is, I would tell you that the rest of the team is watching you. And the minute that happens and you remove someone who's underperforming, and just underperforming by itself isn't grounds for termination. What I would say is when that happens, it's a difficult decision, even a more difficult conversation. But as soon as that, I'm going to say cancer, it's not appropriate, is removed, everyone's mood gets lightened and everyone sort of just starts, performing even at a higher level. So addition by subtraction, pretty straightforward. You hear a lot the word culture now more than 20 years. 20 years ago, no one talked about culture in the workplace. Now it's a big deal, and we talk about work-life balance, and it's legit, something we should absolutely pay attention to. If you're going to talk about work-life balance and culture, you got to walk the walk. So back in the day, we used to work 80 hours a week, and we would wear that like a badge of armor. We'd say, oh, I got here at 6 a.m., and I didn't leave till 11 p.m. We have a wedding and another golf tournament, and working 80 hours. I haven't seen my wife in 10 days, and that used to be how you got promoted to some degree. It's totally bizarre and not appropriate. Nowadays, that's frowned upon, quite honestly, because people burn out. We want to avoid that at all costs. So for me, my younger generation of employees, when they're off, for us, Wednesday through Sunday is kind of our work week. So a lot of folks take Monday and Tuesday off. It used to be that I'd be tied to my phone Monday and Tuesday, answering the president, answering the vice president, treasurer, controller, CFO. Now, younger generation, a lot of you in this room, you go dark Monday and Tuesday. I'm not going to hear from you again until Wednesday when you return to work, which I'm okay with. But for me, the old guy in the room, I sort of had to get used to that. And I can stand in front of you and say, oh, I'm okay with that. And I used to be the guy that worked 90 hours. If I'm going to buy into that culture, I have to also support it and make sure I walk the walk. The other thing about terminations, which is difficult, is that I think 5% of the time, the person on the other side of the room or the other side of the table is surprised, right? I think if someone is absolutely surprised that you've made a change, you're going to remove them from the organization, then they're really, really terrible. 95% of the time, and I mean this, draconian as it may sound, there's a sense of relief. Like I've had to terminate a couple of chefs and a couple of controllers, CFOs. Most of the time, they just know that they're not having fun, coming to work and missing deadlines or not achieving to the standards that we've set. That's no fun at all. Like if you're getting your butt kicked every day and dropping the ball. So I would say if you're going to have to be in a position where you have those tough conversations, rest assured that there's going to be a little sense of relief. That's counterintuitive. The other thing too, to your question, what was your name by the way?
Josiah.
That's right, Josiah. So by the time you make the decision, it's already too late. So what Jack Welch would tell you is by the time you make a decision to remove somebody from your organization, you should have done it 6 months ago because inherently we all want it to work out. We want to avoid that conversation. We like to be optimistic and say, well, maybe Mr. Toronto here, he'll figure it out. He'll get better. But you're already 6 months late according to Jack Welch. So said a different way, this is actually a proverb. I think a Japanese proverb. If you get on the wrong train, get off at the nearest station. Because the longer it takes you to get off, the more expensive the return trip will be and the more time you've wasted. So you can apply that to life, relationships, behavior, a career path. If you know you're going the wrong way in a train, get off. Don't waste your time because it's going to be more expensive to turn around and come back. It's also going to be more timely. All right, so this is a lesson my dad taught me and I've taught my boys. Again, intuitive. You're going to have 100 decisions come across your desk, your inbox every day. Maybe it's 1,000, maybe it's 10, pick a number, it doesn't matter. Everybody in this room, we're all smart individuals. So you're probably going to get 85% of them right. You're going to get 15% of them wrong. And the cool thing is, I think the 15% are going to be of greater value than the 85 that you crush, right? If I've learned anything, it's not by my successes, it's when I've failed. So I'm like, oh, focus on the 15% that you get wrong. But if you have 100 decisions, you get 85, 15. This is the question. What's the worst thing you can do?
Maybe if you get a decision wrong, instead of learning from it, you just like put yourself down and then you start to perform worse. You don't learn from them.
Absolutely correct. If you don't learn from that 15%, shame on you, 100%. My answer was slightly different, but yours is absolutely correct, 100% as well. If you don't focus on the 15, you're missing an opportunity. 100 decisions come across your desk. 85% are right, 15 are going to be wrong. What's the worst thing you can do? Anybody?
Behind you.
Failure to make, oh, sorry, Mr. Toronto.
Repeat the mistake.
Repeat the mistake is another good one. See, there's no just one right answer. You should not repeat mistakes, absolutely. This is what my dad would tell you. If you don't make all 100 decisions in a row, you know you're going to get 15% of them wrong. You know you're going to get 85% of them right. The worst thing you could do is punt off until the day after. It's excruciating to me in a boardroom or at a town hall meeting, or if I'm pitching a large-scale capital project that involves an assessment, which is when we tell people, hey, you owe us $20,000 for the new pool that we're going to put in. There's something, I should put a slide up for this, something nice about a benevolent dictator at the head of the boardroom table saying, this is how it's going to be. People inherently want to be led. Not everybody. This personality test you can undertake to suss this stuff out, but essentially people want to be given direction and led. Teams want to be led. So what's painfully obvious to me is when someone says, I don't know, what do you think? I don't know, what do you think? I don't know, what do you think? 10 minutes of that in the boardroom is like, we can't do this. We have to just make a decision and march on. You're, again, not going to get them all right, but there's something nice for someone to just be that like benevolent dictator and say, this is the direction we're going to go. Foam rolling for the 15%. So does anybody foam roll in the room after a workout? Me too. So your trainer would say, focus on the ouchie. Kevin, I'm a big guy, I need to foam roll more, but I ski and play some sports and have a lot of fun. So if I'm foam rolling like my IT bands or my adductors or my calves, someone might say, just focus on those ouchie spots. Just hang out there where it hurts. So I think of the 85-15 like that too. 85 is fun, like the basketball court analogy, but when I get to that point, back of my calf after I've skied for a couple of days, you just want to hang out on those ouchie spots, as crazy as that sounds. So similar there. These are two books. You could take a picture. This deck I think we'll make available. Unreasonable Hospitality, Will Guidara, he was the owner of a place called EMP, 11 Madison Park in Manhattan. Phenomenal restaurant, world class, 3 Michelin stars. And now they do all vegetarian. I don't think vegan. I think it's a 100% vegetarian menu, which when he came out and decided to do that at a place like EMP was mind-blowing. It was sacrilegious, quite honestly. Checklist Manifesto, really brilliant as well. I'm a guy who makes a lot of checklists, and let me see. Both of them are quick reads too, by the way. So this was just, well, last night and today, but. So like that's me in the hotel room last night for business and preparing. That's just the way I learn. There's nothing magical about that. Some people can do this in their head and not miss a beat, but Checklist Manifesto talks about how checklists can keep us, super on point. It's like when you hear about the tragedy in an operating room where someone amputates the wrong leg, and now they take a big Sharpie and they put a Sharpie on the leg that's supposed to be, they're like, that is the leg. It happens all the time. Pilots, I got my private pilot's license 5 or 6 years ago, fly a tiny little small plane, like 150 horsepower. It's like a sewing machine with wings. But pilots use checklists all the time for redundancy to make sure that we are checking and rechecking and rechecking. This book on the right, Checklist Manifesto, is a super quick read, and it uses sort of real world examples, so you'll blast right through it and it'll resonate with you, I think. Unreasonable Hospitality, it's a collection of anecdotes from Will, again, one of the best restaurants in the world. He tells a story where some folks were visiting EMP from like Switzerland, first time to America, and they went to the 5 best restaurants in New York City, which again, we're fortunate for because it's right down the road from us. So Will's cruising through the dining room and they're like, we went to Per Se, We went to Le Bernardin, we went to EMP, blah, blah, blah. This is so good, but we're flying out tonight. They checked all the boxes, but Will, or one of his waiters, overheard them say, but you know what we didn't get while we were here? It was one of those like dirty Sabrett hot dog cart, dirty water hot dogs, which are all over the place in Manhattan, which are phenomenal, by the way. And so kind of funny that someone traveling to America for fine dining experiences would think of that as a missed opportunity. So Will heard that, and he said, you know what I'm going to do? He ran out of the restaurant, ran down to the nearest dirty hot dog water cart, Manhattan, Midtown, and bought like 3 hot dogs, ran all the way back to the restaurant, went into his kitchen, and said to his executive chef, which again, talk about sacrilege, chef, I need you to cut these hot dogs in half. I need you to put them on a plate with a little dollop of ketchup, a little dollop of mustard, and onions, chopped white onion, whatever it might be. Chef, after losing his mind, saying like, dude, that's not what I do. Once he lost the ego, he did that, cut up the little hot dogs, and Will proceeded to go back out into the dining room and say to Mr. and Mrs. Smith, listen, I overheard you're visiting our country from wherever it was, I forget. I wanted you to know we ran out, we got you some hot dogs, and we'd love for you to enjoy these. And so for me, that's a message of what he calls unreasonable hospitality. Go out and make the extra effort. You could apply that same, metaphor to any business, really. But if you're going to go above and beyond for your customer, run down the street, whatever it is you do, to get those hot dogs and bring them back. That's unreasonable hospitality. It's the reason he's so successful. The book is full of little anecdotes like that and really, really resonates. Another thing, too, I'm not going to talk about generational differences, but there are generational differences in the workplace, and I'm sure you guys have covered this quite a bit. Again, I wasn't a bad student, but I wasn't top of my class by any means. So for me, I rely on getting the easy stuff right. What really frustrates me from time to time is when people that I work with or interview don't get the easy stuff right. So times change, and what we consider right and wrong, pendulum swings, whether it's political correctness or politics, I won't go into, but essentially there's a few like no-brainers. Dress to look the part, be punctual, listen, right? These are all easy. They cost $0, by the way. Use compassion, write thank you cards. I was at a place called the Country Club, famous property up in Boston. Brendan Walsh is the golf pro there, storied professional in our industry, leader in our industry. I was leaving at like 9 o'clock one night, and our golf pro, who typically works from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., was in his office at his desk, just handwriting stuff. So I walked in and knocked on the door, and I said, Pro, what are you doing, dude? Get out of here. He's like, I'm writing a personal thank you card to each of one of our guests who came here and played golf today. And I was mind blown, because that's not a lost art, but cost $0. But here's a guy who's basically about to mail personalized thank you cards from a storied golf property in America. So these are the easy things. So when I talk to young professionals and I mentor young professionals, get the easy stuff right? If you're not like me, if you're not breaking atoms, not splitting atoms, right? You're not a 4.0 GPA. This stuff is easy. It's all low-hanging fruit. Listen, make eye contact. The other thing too is dressing to look the part. We can argue about what's professional today, what's accepted. I suppose it depends on the industry. If we were all working at Google or Apple, we'd be playing ping pong and I'd be wearing flip-flops, which is super cool. If I could, I'd go to work in sweatpants every day, but I don't have that luxury, so I got to wake up and iron and do all that sort of stuff. But I would always say it's better to be a little overdressed, and I don't mean that literally. I mean it figuratively, not literally. If you walk into a party, everybody else says, if you're a guy, if you walk into a party and you don't have a tie on, everybody else has a tie on. Everyone's dressed really, really well, and you're casual. Good luck. If you're overdressed, you walk into a party, you do have a tie on it, everyone else is way more casual, you can always go to your car. Again, not literally, figuratively. Take your tie off and throw it in the back of your car. But come prepared. You can always go to take your tie off, but it's hard to go buy a tie in the middle of the cocktail party. Mentor, mentee, I do a lot more of this, and it's probably the most rewarding part of my job these days. I've got 2 mentees that I meet with regularly, and I sort of met them on that level organically. I didn't pick them out of a crowd and say, I want you to be my mentee, and I'm going to be your mentor, because that just sounds egotistical and weird. They kind of seek you out and say, gosh, I really love this industry. I really love what you're doing. Can we sit for 90 minutes every week and go over some stuff? They want to learn at a more accelerated level than what they are now, which is cool. Super cool for somebody to be in a leadership position. I welcome that. Makes our organization stronger. increases their retention, shows them that you care if you're spending extra time teaching somebody how to read a balance sheet, right? And they're in the food and beverage department, or you're a cook and they want to be a GM someday or a CFO someday, and you as a leader are taking time out of your day to spend doing this stuff, they're going to work for you forever, give or take, but it's going to show that you care and they're going to stick around. Coolest thing is that I learned just as much from my mentee as I think they learned from me, maybe even more. And so when we have dialogue and share, I'm writing stuff down too, because she's super, like in one instance, her name is Sydney, super sharp. And like some of the stuff, she's 24 years old. Like she was born the year I left here, you know? So her perspective on things is vastly different than mine. And I find that very refreshing and rewarding. And then be a steward of your industry. 50% listen, 50% talk. It's that easy. I've had really good mentors who are champions in the industry, and they're sort of like, and then I did this, and then I told the CFO, you better do this, and then I stormed out of the room, and it's like boring, right? So talk 50% of the time and listen the other 50% of the time. Wow, okay. 45 minutes, 42 minutes, wrapping up. When one of us shines, all of us shine. Golden rule, again, I don't, I'm not a molecular biologist. I would say treat everybody the way you want to be treated. It's a very small world. My industry is like 1,200 proper private clubs in all of the country, and some overseas, more and more, obviously, joining our association and being part of it. But the amount of overlap and the amount of like, oh, do you know so-and-so? And some of us have befriended each other on LinkedIn. It's a Venn diagram with a large portion of overlapping pieces. It's really like, a really small world. Don't be a jerk. That's the other thing. Your reputation will precede you. And inevitably, you'll be sitting across from someone who knows you. And again, intuitive. I'm not sharing anything that's mind-blowing, but I can't tell you how many times someone's reputation has gotten them in trouble. They're great on paper. They have the skills. But if you're not a good person, good luck. Last thing I would say, you got to take care of yourself. I'm not the portrait of health, but I like back to the first slide, my wife and I, she apparently looks exactly the same as she did 32 years ago. But we're like the oxygen mask on an airplane. I have 2 children. They tell you if something bad's happening, put your oxygen mask on first before you I remember the first time I heard that and my boys were small. I was like, well, how is that possible? I'm going to jump over and save them first. But the fact of the matter is, if you don't take care of yourself, again, figuratively and literally, if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of those people that are depending on you, whether it's your children on an airplane or 200 employees that are looking to you for direction day in and day out. In mental health, obviously, as a guy that struggled from time to time with anxiety, and there's ways to cope, many, many ways to cope with that, I would say deal with it, right? The stigmas are gone. You guys are really fortunate that, much like working 90 hours a week, 25 years ago, somebody in my position would never in a million years say, oh, I'm feeling a little bit anxious today. It's just unheard of, right? And so I would say, if you broke your arm, you'd go to see a doctor, right? If I fell down and broke my arm, I'd go to Spear and get it fixed. So mental health is very much the same thing. Go get it fixed. Talk to somebody. Oh, there we are. Thank you all. I should have opened by this. I should have said thanks for the opportunity. It's been fun. Those of you that I've met prior to today, it's been really, really cool. Thank you. And again, it's funny for me as a guy that used to sit in the back of the hall, kind of with my hat like this, muscling through class, to be asked to speak in front of people that are part of an MBA program. It's really, really special. I'm honored and I feel fortunate. And I love this institution, and I wish you guys all the best of luck. You're in a phenomenal period of your lives, and it goes by pretty quick. So take full advantage. But where you are now, figuratively and literally, like in this setting, this part of the world, and where you are in your careers is pretty amazing. So don't lose sight of that. Thanks.
If you like it,
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.